So this is a Nissan Pathfinder behind me. It's a 2007, I believe, and it's in the shop today for lower ball joints. So come along. Okay, so you're looking at the passenger lower ball joint. This is the ball joint stem points down. This is the pinch bolt and the steering knuckle. Keep an eye on this right here while I lift up and down on the steering knuckle. Yeah. We're going to take this nut off this tie rod end and pop this loose. So this is a Moog aftermarket tie rod end, but it was a 22 millimeter nut that sat on top. I don't know if the factory ones are the same size or not. But everybody always wants the size of all the nuts and bolts. Okay, to separate it, we don't want to hit it right here because we'll screw up the threads. So we're going to hit right here on the steering knuckle, and it's going to flex the metal, and it's going to break the taper, and that should come out of there. We'll see what happens. Yep. Okay, before I take the brakes off, I'm going to take a screwdriver and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to pry on the brake pad just to create a little bit of distance. It's basically pushing the pistons in just a little bit on the brake caliper, and that'll provide just a little bit of play in there, so when we go to put it back on, we're not fighting it to get it over this rust ridge. That's all it takes right there. And then on the back side here, there's two 19 millimeter bolts. Okay, we'll pull our caliper off there, and what I like to do is I got a couple pieces of OSB, just scrap pieces. Just stick them in there. If a 2x4 will fit, stick it in there. Just keeps the brake pads from falling out of place. We don't need to be doing a brake job. And then we're going to take our little S-hook off the end of our black rubber bungee cord. I'm sure you guys have one of these in your garage. Just find a hole in the frame, and we're going to hang the caliper up out of the way. Sometimes you got to stick a screwdriver in between those boards, or those pieces of board, just to hold the brake pads in place. There's an ABS sensor right here. Oh, that's not going to come apart nice, so we're going to leave it there. So we're just going to pull the wire loose here, just to give us a little bit of slack. I'm going to pry the connector, maybe pry the connector off of its little spot here. Okay, here's the connector right here. Normally lives right down in this area here. If you pull this loose, it gives you a little bit of slack where you can get it up here where you can look at it. I'm going to stick a screwdriver in here to try to depress that tab, because it's just not working here. This guy's fighting me. Oh, I think she's... Oh, there we go. She came apart. I'm going to pull this nut off on this upper ball joint, but somebody really did a number on this cotter pin here. Yeah, that's what I thought was going to happen. It's not going to come out because somebody pulled that pin, that cotter pin in there as tight as they could, and they wrapped it around. Here's a little pro tip: when you put your cotter pin in, don't pull it in. Let me get a cotter pin for an example here. This is a bad example of a cotter pin, but don't pull it in until that is all the way tight against the bolt, and then just wrap it around as tight as you can. Leave it out a little bit, wrap it around on both sides, and that way the cotter pin can kind of float. There's a little bit of play in there, and if you do that, you'll thank yourself a year or two later when you're taking it apart and it actually comes apart. In this case, I'm going to have to probably break these or cut these off or snap them off and then drive them out or drill them out, put a new pin in there. It just makes a 2-minute or a 5-second deal last 5 minutes or longer. Okay, all that could have been avoided. I just wasted 5 minutes trying to get that cotter pin out of there. And this is a 22 millimeter. And I'm going to put the nut back on just a couple of threads to hold the steering knuckle in place until I'm ready for it. Okay, next we've got this pinch bolt that pinches together the steering knuckle on the stem of the lower ball joint. This is a rusty 19 millimeter, and I believe the other side's a 17 millimeter. And the replacement ball joints come with the new one because these don't come apart nice sometimes. So the bolt is completely seized in there. It's not spinning at all. There's a little slit in the back side of this. It's a good idea to run a wedge in there. It kind of helps separate the steering knuckle from clamping onto the ball joint stem. But I'm going to hammer this out. We got a new bolt, so we don't have to worry about messing up the threads on this. Yeah, maybe I'm going to hammer it out. Thing wasn't very cooperative. So now I'm going to hit this right here with a hammer. I'm going to try not to hit this. But mostly right here. And that'll break the taper, and then this will drop down. The nut is just here to catch it, to keep it from falling off. Everything else on this knuckle is ready to come apart. Wow. Made it look too easy. Okay. Want to make sure to push in on the axle shaft as this knuckle comes out so we don't overextend our CV axle. And this guy should be falling out of here, but he's not, because she's still hanging on down there. Boy, it doesn't want to come off, does it? So I've got a chisel. I'm going to try to drive this chisel in here to maybe spread this apart a little bit. Why are you fighting me so bad? Is it because I'm trying to make a video? Is that why? All right. I won! Oh, that was fun. So with the steering knuckle out of the way, we can see our ball joint, and you can see there's a big snap ring going around the top of it. the ball joint presses up from the bottom. So we're going to pull this snap ring off. Sometimes it's nice to loosen them up a little bit with a hammer and a screwdriver, but since my screwdriver is being used over there, you can actually remove them that way if you don't have snap ring pliers. Here's a ball joint removal pro tip. Use a hammer. Boom! That ball joint is just wore out. So I'm going to use a wire brush on a drill just to clean the rust scale out of the inside of this. You don't want to use anything too abrasive because you don't want to remove any material that would make the ball joint fit loose. Nobody wants loose ball joint. So here's our ball joint. Come from Napa. Here's the part number if anyone's interested. I'll put a link to it in the description, an Amazon link. Matter of fact, I'll link all kinds of stuff to Amazon in the description. Okay, so here's a tip for everybody. Before you install your ball joint, put your grease fitting in there and tighten it up. Okay, then take a paint pen or a marker or something. We're going to put a little dot of paint right where the zerk fitting, the grease fitting is facing. And the reason for that is if we install this ball joint and end up having this grease fitting facing the inside of the tire, you think the monkeys at the oil change place, sorry monkeys, you think they're going to waste their time trying to grease it? No, they're absolutely not going to do that. You point it forward so that with the tire installed, you can still easily access it with a grease gun, and this ball joint will last longer. And I'll make less money because I won't be changing it again. But think about that. I mean, that little stuff matters. Now take this back out because you don't want to damage it when you install the ball joint. Now we know we just have to install the ball joint with that little dot of yellow paint facing towards the front of the car. So we've got our ball joint out of the ball joint kit. We've got a cup that fits it. So what I'm going to do is orient it in the right fashion and then give her a little tappy tap, hold her in place. Okay, now you saw how much that ball joint came up in there. It's halfway installed right now. If I wanted to, I could keep hitting that with a hammer and I could successfully drive that ball joint all the way in. But for the purposes of filming a YouTube video, I'm going to do it the slow way and the proper way. Okay. Sucker. All right. it's installed. You want to make sure that the snap ring groove is visible all the way around, and it is. So it's bottomed out, or bottomed up, I guess you'd say. So we're going to install the snap ring next. I'm going to tell you, I really like these snap ring pliers. I actually bought these at Harbor Freight. I was doing a Ford, and I needed a nice long set of needle nose pliers for getting the axle, the snap ring off the front axle. And I bought these for like 60 bucks, and so far I love these things. They work great. They claim to have a warranty on them, lifetime warranty, so we'll see what happens when I break them. They're Icon brand tools. I've never broken and returned any of those. Okay, our snap ring's in place. It should be nice and close together right here. If it's not, it's probably hung up somewhere. Put our grease fitting in next. Whoa! We want the grease fitting to tighten up so that it's facing forward, remember. You don't want to over tighten them either. There. I've had them break off in there, and then that just ruins your day. So now, even with all the brakes and tire and everything assembled, you can come in through here and you can access it and put grease in it. Okay, let's reassemble. It was nice the kit came with a brand new nut and bolt. Okay, we're going to put a new cotter pin in here. Now most people just put it in as far as it'll go in, and then they twist it around. And that sucks, because then whoever takes it apart 6 months from now has to fight with it. So let's be nice to the next guy, even if it's not me. So by giving it that little extra bit of play back and forth, that cotter pin will sit in there loose and it'll move around, and that's what you want, because then it won't seize up. At least the likelihood of it to seize up is much less. There we go. Okay, we're going to hook our ABS line back up. And we're going to put the wire back in all the little keepers it's got here. And before we hook the tie rod up, we're going to put the axle nut on and the brakes on. Now we're going to tighten this a little bit tighter than finger tight, how it was when it came off. According to my book, it's 101 foot-pounds, which is considerably tighter than, you know, thumb and finger tight. Now I didn't have a cotter pin that was wide enough, so there's such a big hole in the axle here. So what I did was I put this cotter pin in the vise and just tapped on it a couple times with a hammer and kind of spread it out. I just didn't want to use the old one because it was falling apart. I guess I couldn't use it. The last leg of it broke off. And I feel like this cotter pin is only to keep the nut from completely falling off, because the cotter pin is the hole is even an 1/8 inch away from the nut, so even if the nut started to back off, all the cotter pin's going to do is save the nut from falling off the car. I guess it's Nissan, I don't know. I'm going to try to stake these so that maybe we won't have that problem. I'm going to get a hammer and I'm going to stake each one of the axle nuts. Just because I'm nervous about these things coming loose again. That'll just give it a little bit more of a bite, a little bit more of a pinch to hold it in place. Okay, so we're going to put the brakes on next. We'll put the tie rod on. We're done. I like to use a pair of vice grips to hold the rotor in place. Any of the rotors that don't have the little screws, just throw a pair of vice grips on there to hold it in place while you put the brakes back on. Okay, the last thing is we'll put this tie rod end back on. We'll tighten it to factory specs. And then if the hole doesn't line up, we'll tighten it a little more. Where are we at? There we go. We'll put a brand new cotter pin in there. And we'll leave her so there's some play. As long as it's got play like that, that cotter pin will not seize in there. And in a year from now, whoever the guy is that's taking this car apart, this thing will come right out for him. Alright. I just want to show you the importance of orientation on your Zerk fittings. Look at that. Now when you go to Cheap Charlie's oil change, there's no reason they don't grease your lower ball joint. I mean, literally, it's just straight into it. Nothing in the way. That's why it's important to clock the grease fitting properly. So that's how you put ball joints in a Nissan Pathfinder. If this video helped you out, give me a thumbs up, hit subscribe, check out my other videos. Thanks for watching.